Today, the US and China compete across artificial intelligence, cyber technology, and naval positioning. They operate the two largest economies, constantly maneuvering for global influence. It is easy to assume this tension started with recent trade tariffs or modern microchip bans. These conflicts are recent developments, but the friction began over 100 years ago, long before the modern world took shape. When powerful militaries operate in such close proximity, the weight of that history makes even a single naval miscalculation potentially catastrophic. In the 19th century, Western merchants aggressively expanded their trade routes to access Chinese markets for tea, silk, and porcelain. This exchange quickly devolved into an exercise in foreign pressure. Western powers gained access to Chinese ports and systematically eroded Chinese sovereignty. That period of economic exploitation left lasting marks. It established a deep suspicion of foreign intervention that influenced Chinese policy decisions for several generations. The dynamic shifted abruptly during World War II. Japan invaded large portions of Chinese territory, destroying cities and displacing millions. Forced into survival, China and the United States became military allies. American forces supplied weapons, logistics, and training to Chinese troops. This included a volunteer group of American combat pilots, known as the Flying Tigers, who supported Chinese forces against Japanese air attacks. For a brief window, they stood on the same side against a common enemy. But internal divisions within China were already escalating, and they would soon fracture the relationship permanently. Following World War II, the Chinese Civil War resumed between nationalist and communist forces. By 1949, the communist forces, led directly by Mao Zedong, won the conflict and established the People's Republic of China. The defeated nationalist government then retreated across the strait to the island of Taiwan, creating a territorial and ideological split. The United States made a defining policy decision. It refused to recognize Communist China. Instead, Washington recognized Taiwan as the legitimate government, positioning the island as a stronghold opposing communist expansion. This divide quickly turned into physical confrontation. During the Korean War, Chinese troops directly engaged United Nations forces led by the United States, bringing the two militaries to the brink of direct war. Diplomatic relations collapsed, and trade stopped completely. The United States spent the following decades building a strategic barrier of alliances across Asia, a containment strategy that continues to dictate military posturing today. Then, in 1972, the hostility broke. U.S. President Richard Nixon traveled to Beijing, reopening communication channels after decades of total silence. Diplomatic recognition eventually followed, allowing China to integrate into international markets. Factories expanded rapidly, and China evolved into the primary manufacturing center for global exports. The volume of goods flowing from east to west spiked exponentially as American companies shifted supply chains overseas. Simultaneously, American corporate investment poured directly back into Chinese production. This scale redirected global wealth, creating an entanglement neither nation could easily reverse. But massive economic growth generates vast resources, and those resources naturally fund strategic ambition. The financial partnership created the exact conditions for a renewed rivalry. By the 21st century, China moved past assembling basic consumer goods, focusing on research into artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and advanced semiconductors. Controlling advanced technology dictates who commands the future of global infrastructure. Business competition quickly escalated into a race for national security. That new wealth also financed rapid military modernization. China accelerated its shipbuilding capacity, and they constructed major artificial island bases equipped with military radar and runways across contested waters in the South China Sea. The United States countered by intensifying naval patrols and freedom of navigation operations in those exact areas. Operating powerful militaries in such close proximity drastically raises the risk of accidental military escalation. The rivalry now spans across multiple domains. It includes trade restrictions, strict export controls, and supply chain shifts, deployed alongside military maneuvers. All of these tensions converge on Taiwan. The island remains the physical location of that 1949 ideological fracture, and Beijing considers it Chinese territory. A conflict over this specific geography would trigger defensive alliances across the Pacific. It would also sever the global supply chains that rely entirely on the island's advanced semiconductor fabrication. both nations are actively preparing for extreme scenarios. They are upgrading energy infrastructure, testing cyber capabilities, and expanding military reach into space. Every diplomatic decision and technological restriction adds a new layer to this 100-year evolution. The path these two nations take next will determine the stability of the global network for decades to come.